The first time I noticed something was wrong, I blamed myself. It started with Harold's death. They said it was peaceful. A quiet slipping away in his sleep, the warmth of his hand fading from mine before I even noticed. But death is never truly quiet. Not when it leaves behind the echoes of a life once lived, the scent of aftershave still clinging to the pillow, his slippers by the bed as if waiting for his return. Not when it fills a house with an unbearable, suffocating silence. The funeral was a blur. People pressed my hands, whispered condolences, but their words were static, noise against the sharp, undeniable void. Clara held me up when my legs failed, her own grief tucked behind a determined, maternal gaze. The priest spoke of eternal love, of reunions beyond this world, but all I could think of was Harold's laugh, the way it would fill a room, push away the dark corners. The house was empty without him. I tried to keep busy. I organized drawers, dusted shelves that had already been cleaned, rearranged the spice rack alphabetically. Anything to keep my hands from trembling, my mind from spiraling into the silence he left behind. Then the little things began. The shortbread was first. It was a Tuesday. I'd bought a fresh tin from the market, the buttery kind Harold used to sneak from the pantry when he thought I wasn't looking. By Thursday, it was empty. I stood in the kitchen, clutching the tin, my knuckles whitening. "You've been stress eating again," I told myself. "Grief does that, they say. Swells the body while hollowing the mind." But the mirror didn't lie. My cheeks had rounded, my floral dresses straining at the seams. Just loneliness, I decided. Hunger masquerading as hunger. Then the teaspoons vanished. The silver ones, our wedding gifts, engraved with looping initials. I tore apart drawers, blamed the gaps in my memory. Age carves holes in your thoughts like termites in wood. But when the photo frames began tilting askew, Harold's face staring crookedly from the mantel, I started locking the doors. The man at the park didn't help. He lingered at the edge of the oak grove during my evening walks, a gaunt shadow in a tattered coat. His hair hung in greasy ropes, his eyes glinting like chipped flint. The first time I saw him, he was gnawing on an apple core, juice dribbling into his beard. He didn't blink as I passed, just tracked me with that hollow stare. Harmless, I told myself. Just another stray. But I began taking the long way home, my keys clenched between my fingers. The house felt heavier those days. Drafts slithered through cracks that hadn't existed before. Floorboards groaned like old bones. Once, while folding laundry, I swore I heard a muffled thud above me. I craned my neck at the ceiling, my bad ear tilted upward. Silence. "Just the pipes," I muttered. Harold used to say this house had a heartbeat. Now it felt like a carcass. The noises grew worse. At night, I heard breathing, slow and steady, just beyond the edge of my consciousness. Sometimes, I felt a whisper of movement in the dark, the shift of air when someone walks past. I told myself it was grief playing tricks, a mind stretched too thin. The missing objects, the rearranged furniture, the eerie feeling of being watched, I ignored them all, willed myself into complacency. Until Clara visited. She arrived with lilacs and a too bright smile, her perfume smothering the stale air. "You look tired," she said, hugging me. I didn't tell her I'd started sleeping in the armchair, the TV flickering static until dawn. That first night, I slept deeply, soothed by the murmur of her voice downstairs. But at breakfast, Clara's hands shook as she stirred her coffee. "Did you hear that last night?" she asked. "Hear what?" "Footsteps. Upstairs." I chuckled. This old place talks to itself. It's just settling. She didn't laugh. That night, I found her pacing the halls, a flashlight clutched like a weapon. "Go to bed, Mom," she said, her voice thin. 3 nights later, a metallic clang ripped me from sleep. I found Clara in the hallway, barefoot and pale, staring at the ceiling. At her feet lay Harold's old dog bowl, still spinning. "What are you doing?" I whispered. "Shh." She gripped my wrist. Above us, the floorboards creaked, a slow, deliberate rhythm. Then, as if snuffed out, the noise stopped. We stood there for 15 minutes, Clara's breath shallow, my confusion curdling into dread. Then the footsteps resumed, heavier now, pacing toward the attic hatch. Clara began her experiments. She dropped a spoon. The footsteps froze. She slammed a cupboard door. Silence. An animal wouldn't learn, she hissed, her eyes wild. By the third night, she'd mapped it, every creak, every pause. There's someone up there, she said, showing me a notebook scribbled with times and reactions. We debated what to do, but deep down, I already knew. That insidious whisper in my mind had been trying to warn me all along. So Clara called the police. The officers arrived at dawn. 2 of them. Big men with weary eyes and hands resting on their holsters. They climbed the attic ladder, their boots scraping wood. The tension stretched, thick and suffocating. Then the scream came. It wasn't human, a guttural snarl that shook the walls. They dragged him down, a skeletal thing in stained boxers, reeking of sweat and rot. His hair was Harold silver, but his eyes. God, those eyes. Vacant and ravenous. I'd seen them in the park. The attic was a den. Candy wrappers, a reeking mattress, and my missing teaspoons hammered into the rafters like grotesque wind chimes. But worse were the holes. Dozens of them, drilled through the ceiling above my bed, my dressing room, the bath. He's been watching you, Clara whispered before reaching into the sink. They told us his name was Roland Vick. A drifter wanted in 3 states, assaults, break-ins, worse. He'd sawed through the attic vent months ago, surviving on my food, my schedule. The photos they found made Clara scream, Polaroids of me sleeping, dressing, staring blankly at game shows. In one, I was bent over the oven, my robe gaping. The date stamp read 2 days after Harold's funeral. Now, I triple-lock the attic. I check closets. I scream at shadows. Clara wants me to move, but this is my home. His home too, now. Last night, as I sipped Earl Grey in my armchair, the TV flickering, I heard it again, a faint creak above me, rhythmic and patient. Just the pipes, I told myself. Just the house.